Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Pathways World School Gurgaon's Fireside Chat. Today we have with us Mr. George Benaroya of NYU University. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Sir, I would like to start with the first question. The first question I would like to ask you is, in the forever evolving world, especially with AI, what skills do you think as high school students we should develop that will help us prosper in this world?
I think that's first on AI, right? I use AI all the time, 26 times per day. But one of the things that we need to be aware of AI is that AI makes mistakes, a lot of mistakes. So we need to be good at checking or becoming experts about the data that we get on AI. And some of the skills that, I think are useful for students to have. One will be doing what we're taking, this session now, or, at a library where we can read books. It's extremely powerful to read books. As I was, just looking at the books here, I thought, Jesus, I wish I could read all those books. So reading books to learn more, to have the ability to make the right decisions, I think is something that is really, really healthy. The other tip that I will give students in general is to be very, very flexible. If you think about it, many times with AI, the response that you will get are going to be very rigid or very concrete. But we need people who are flexible, right? Who are willing to do this or that. So the more flexible that you are as a person, the more willing that you are to help others. That would be really, really healthy, both in high school, to get admitted to university and then to have a job. And then the last tip that I will give is to develop the sense of empathy and being able to listen to others. Many times when we talk to our friends in high school, we're always thinking about what we are going to say, but we don't take the time to listen to the others. And we know based on scientific research that if we listen to our friend in high school, the other person is 5 times more likely to remember as well. So all these ideas are some of the tips that I will use in today's world.
Thank you. Most high schoolers will benefit from these 3 paths of advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
The second question I would like to ask you is, what would be the first step to turn an idea into a startup for a student?
To me, you mean to start up a company?
Yes.
So what I tell everyone to do is what I do myself. I work in private equity, where at my company, where I am an executive of the company, we buy other companies, and I also buy companies for myself. And the first thing that you want to do is research. Many times students believe that they have a real good idea, and they develop the marketing of the idea without doing research. What I will typically do for any business that I'm looking at, imagine that it's a coffee shop. Then I will go and I look at 100 coffee shops that are being sold in any market, in India, in the US, or whatever. And I will try to see how much money are they actually making. Because the thing about estimates is that those numbers are made up, right? I like to see real numbers. So the first step will be about doing research based on financials, right? How much money they make. The second thing that I will do is, or that I actually do is, to pretend that I am a consumer or a customer. And then I will go to my competitors. If I'm buying a coffee shop, I'm going to go to other coffee shops on the same block and see whether they're good or bad at what they're doing. And by doing all these checks on real facts, on hard data, that will enable me to validate whether what I'm thinking that it will be a good business in the past, there has been a good business or not.
Thank you, sir. So, for the third question, I'd like to ask you, what is the biggest mistake founders make, and how can students who are still in school avoid those mistakes?
The biggest mistake founders make is to overspend money. I have this principle that I follow in all my companies, and that is first we make money and then we spend it, and not the other way around. What many people will do is they will have this gut feeling that this is going to work. So they will invest their own money, or they will borrow money, they will take a loan, or they will get an equity investor. What we do in the largest companies in the world, in the Procter & Gambles of the world, is we do something called a test market. Before we launch a product in the entire world, we will go to a small city and we will try it out and see does it work or not. And then we're going to go to the capital, or to one country, to one continent, and so on. And so if you apply the same concept, what I tell all my students, what I tell everyone that I help with their own business is first start with something basic. Do not create an app. get a website for free. Don't even pay for the website, right? And see whether the idea that you have is actually working. Start real small. See if you're able to sell your idea to get a client to anyone, and then try to use the amount of money that you make to grow. There is one example of someone who did that, and that is the founder of IKEA. IKEA is a super successful company with revenue of billions of dollars, and he was able to achieve a fortune of $30 billion or more. And he always followed that principle. He started very slow, and with the money that he was making, he will buy the next company, start the next factory and the next store and so on. So first we make money and then we spend it, will be my advice.
Thank you, sir. When do you know how to pursue a startup, or maybe pivot, or even let go of the startup idea completely?
Well, I typically buy companies that are already existing, right? But if I was looking to a startup, this is the way I would go about it. First, I did the research, right? And based on hard numbers, not on estimates, I have some idea of how much my sales and my net income is. Net income is the profitability, right? So you sell something for 100, and then it costs you, say, 50 on the cost to make it, and then 30 in all the expenses, and you say 100 minus 50 minus 30, you make a profit of 20. So imagine that I say, okay, my net income or my profit is going to be 20, and it's actually zero, right? Then I say, this is not working, and I try to, why is it that it's not working? But then I say, okay, I will keep trying, and then I see that now it's minus 10. I say, okay, there has to be a point where I will give up, and to have that discipline, right? To be able to say at this point I will give up is really healthy, because by doing that, by abandoning a project where you're losing money, then you can go and create a new business where you will actually make money. Most companies, they didn't succeed on the first idea they had. They launched something, it wasn't working, and then they launched something else and something else, and that is how they were able to make money. So for that, you need to have discipline to say at this point I will stop, and to that, you need to have the goals before you start. Your question is, how do I know? I have that, before I start. I say, this is my target, and at this point, I will stop doing it. And you can go ahead and do something else. It could also be that you pivot, right? That you thought that you will be selling something, and you realize that actually your consumers want something else. And then you can maybe maintain your business, but change it to this other thing that your consumers want to buy.
In a decade's time, what opportunities do you think high school students will have that a lot of people aren't talking about?
I think that what you need to think about high school, depending on what year in high school you are. Let's say that you are a freshman, right? And it's 4 years. So you will say, okay, 3 more years to finish high school, and then 4 more years to go to university. So that'll be 7 years ahead. And maybe you do a master's or not. But your idea should be, okay, when I graduate from university, what are my best chances of getting a job? And in general, what is always good to do is to see what are the trends, right? So nowadays, anything that is related to data, not necessarily to AI anymore, looks like something healthy, right? That you will still be around 7 years or 10 years from now. But in general, what you want to do is you want to have something that is easy to reapply in any business, right? The drawback with niches is that you can only apply the things that you learn in that small business, right? But if you have something more general, that will be healthier. So I will go back to my ideas, right? What you got to do is you have to make sure that you read a lot to be well versed, so that when you read something on AI, you're able to say, no, that doesn't make sense. That is not right. You need to be able to be very flexible, right? To be willing to do anything, and then you're much more likely to be hired. And then you need to have this idea of resilience, right? That if the first thing didn't work out, you go ahead and you try the next one and the next one. But I tell you, I am delighted to have come all the way to, from New York to Pathway. It's true that I was in a town, nearby and so, but it still took me 1 full day to get here. And it's been delightful to be, all these days with you and with your friends. I've learned so much. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, sir. Your conversations are very insightful. It's an honor to meet you, sir.